That'd be great. All right. Awesome. All right, so was everything going well? Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started then. All right. Good morning, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Karen Ames. I am the Interim Director of the U.S. Campaign for Burma. Welcome to the Rohingya Genocide Commemoration, Moving Forward in Unity and Solidarity. Co-sponsored by the Rohingya Women Web Series, Never Again Coalition, Refugees International, Burma Task Force, UUSC, and USCB. August 25th is a day that we commemorate the 2017 Rohingya Genocide, and while today is the 24th, we are here today to not only remember the lives lost and forever changed 5 years ago, but how we can support and aid the impacted communities moving forward. We, the advocacy community, often call for unity and solidarity from the international community as we advocate and fight for the people of Burma. This is even more so true for the Rohingya and ethnic minorities as they look towards a future that includes them in all spaces and decision-making levels in Burma. Today, we will look at the exclusionary practices experienced by the Rohingya and ethnic nationalities, what has been done to offset the negative impacts, and what can be done moving forward for a more inclusive Burma. Before we dive into our panel discussion, Adam of Burma Task Force will introduce UN Special Rapporteur Tom Andrews' video message to kick off our event. Adam?
Thank you, Karen. Hello, everybody. I'm Adam Carroll, UN Programs Director for Burma Task Force, which is a program of justice for all, human rights advocacy NGO focused on assisting persecuted minorities such as the Rohingya and the Uyghur. We appreciate the importance of partnership building for solidarity, in this case with the U.S. Campaign for Burma and several allied groups. In Burma, partnership building means encouraging trust among diverse ethnic groups and democracy activists. It's crucial for success. On this sad occasion of the 5th anniversary of the genocidal mass displacement of most of the Rohingya population from Rakhine State, let us all be energized by our collective determination to create a more just and peaceful Burma. I am honored to introduce our colleague, Tom Andrews, the UN Special Rapporteur for Burma, or Myanmar, a role that speaks truth to power. With a solid human rights background, as well as service in the US government, Tom is well equipped to hold the brutal Burmese military accountable, despite all the roadblocks at the United Nations. Tom Andrews recorded the following video for us yesterday. So if you could put it on the screen, that would be great, Jason.
Five years ago today, Myanmar forces began a brutal, systematic attack against Rohingya men, women, and children in Rakhine State. 5 years later, it is long past time to call these attacks what they are: genocide. For the world to redouble its effort at holding the perpetrators of these attacks accountable, and to give the Rohingya inside and outside of Myanmar the attention, resources, and support that they need and deserve. Beginning late at night on August 24th, 2017, and lasting for weeks, Myanmar forces planned and executed attacks that resulted in the widespread and targeted killing of Rohingya civilians, the systematic violence and looting, burning, and razing of entire Rohingya villages. Myanmar forces murdered thousands of Rohingya and forced over 700,000 to flee for their lives into Bangladesh. The horrific attacks that we remember and commemorate today followed decades of bigotry and discrimination, the denial of civil and political rights, brutal physical attacks, and the perpetuation of hate speech intended to dehumanize the Rohingya. Prior to my appointment as UN Special Rapporteur and before the genocidal attacks, I conducted multiple fact-finding trips to Rakhine State, witnessing firsthand the oppressive conditions Rohingya were living in and the denial of basic rights that they had to endure. I visited what is and what remains to this day effectively a concentration camp or ghetto where over 120,000 Rohingya are confined in Sitwe. I remember a man telling me that if the world would not help to free them from the camps, then to please bomb them, as death would be preferable to the horrible conditions that he and his family were forced to endure. I met with a man on one trip to Rakhine in 2014 who was in need of routine medication. When I returned months later, his wife told me that her husband had perished because the Myanmar authorities had expelled foreign medical workers, denying him the basic care that was literally a matter of life and death. I tell this story because I want to make clear that the Rohingya genocide happened not just in August of 2017, but over years. The planning was detailed and long-ranged. As we commemorate these attacks today, we must not lose sight of the situation of the Rohingya still inside of Myanmar. All aspects of their lives remain heavily controlled by the military, and they are systematically denied their basic rights. And of course, we must not lose our focus on the more than 1 million Rohingya survivors who are living in Bangladesh. I have been to the camps in Cox's Bazar and to Bhashan Char, meeting with hundreds of survivors. The Rohingya in Bangladesh continue to live with the trauma of what they witnessed, by the deaths of their loved ones, by the loss of their community and the loss of their homes, by the attempted destruction of their very identity. Life in Bangladesh is very difficult. Rohingya are unable to return home, confined to very cramped camps, often lacking security and unable to pursue their livelihood. Make no mistake, the Myanmar military bears the blame for the Rohingya situation in Bangladesh, but I call on the international community to strengthen its support for the Rohingya who are living in camps in Bangladesh today. This needs to be done through robust funding that ensures access to quality, inclusive humanitarian services, to healthcare, and to educational opportunities, to skills development, and livelihood opportunities until they can finally return home. The safe, voluntary, and sustainable repatriation of Rohingya back to their homes in Rakhine State is a goal that many share. Unfortunately, that goal seems more further away now than ever before. The very same military and its top general that directed the genocidal attacks against the Rohingya are now trying to bring the entire nation to its knees following the attempted coup in February of 2021. This is why accountability is so important. The Myanmar military has yet to be held to account for the ultimate crime, genocide. It is no wonder then that they have had the audacity to imprison and indeed execute democracy and human rights advocates and elected leaders while engaging in yet more atrocity crimes against the people of Myanmar. And so it is critical that once and for all, the international community hold those who are responsible for this horror fully accountable. I stand in awe of those Rohingya survivors, activists, and human rights defenders who, despite their circumstances, are working together with international lawyers to creatively pursue justice in diverse jurisdictions, including the International Court of Justice. To complement these tireless efforts, I call on the international community to do its part and refer the situation to the International Criminal Court without delay, to bring universal jurisdiction cases where possible, and to put the maximum pressure on this brutal military through economic and diplomatic measures. As we mark this dark anniversary, let us all commit ourselves to standing with and for the Rohingya, to join in solidarity with them in not only words, but more importantly, with action. The Rohingya, both inside and outside of Myanmar, need and deserve the support of the international community. They need and deserve justice. They need and deserve an international community that is prepared to provide them with the support and the resources to not only survive, but to rebuild their lives. The Rohingya deserve nothing less. Thank you.
And thanks to Tom Andrews, Special Rapporteur, UN Special Rapporteur. I think some of you will recall Yang Hee Lee in that role, also excellent. Special Rapporteur Quintana. There's been this resource at the UN for a number of years, which is very important, and to be distinguished from the Special Envoy, who plays a more diplomatic track, and sometimes that's controversial. But Tom Andrews is very clear on human rights, and we're glad to have him as part of this program. Wanted to do a couple of housekeeping notes for the listeners and viewers. Please type your questions in the Q&A box, and please feel free to add the name of the speakers if you want to direct your question to a specific one. One of our colleagues will be General Secretary of the Women's League of Burma, and is one of the representatives of the Women's League of Burma in the National Unity Consultative Council. She is also currently serving as a member of the standing committee of her mother organization, Karen Women's Organization. Welcome also. And before we get to the panelists, I'm going to toss this back to my colleague, Karen, who has been directing and largely organizing this event. Thank you very much, Karen. And would you like to introduce the moderator?
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for introducing everyone. Our moderator this morning is Yasmin Ullah. She is an independent Rohingya activist, and I'm sure many of you know her very well, a co-founder of the Rohingya Women Webinar Series, and she also currently serves on our board for the U.S. Campaign for Burma. Yasmin, if you may, you can take over now.
Thank you very much, Adam, and thank you, Karen, and thank you, USCB and other organizations for hosting this event, a very important event. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be with you all here today, commemorating the moments of such grave pain for the Rohingya community, but also an important reminder that we owe so much for, we owe so much to our people for the works that they've done to uplift the communities, from campaign as violent as the August 2017. People like our stellar panelists today, that we will be hearing from shortly, have painstakingly worked for the betterment of our communities as well as the Myanmar future overall. I'd like to first begin by acknowledging that I speak to you all today from an unceded traditional territories of the Semiahmoo, Katzie, Coquitlam, Kwantlen, Musqueam, Kakate, Tsleil-Waututh, Tuasin First Nations and other Coast Salish people. Unceded means that the lands were never surrendered or given up, and thus I and others are operating on a stolen land. Let's jump right in. I'd like to pose this question to all of you, all of our panelists, and please feel free to respond to one another as the other panelists speak about the issues. What are the things that concern you the most in the current Myanmar situation? And what are you, your colleagues, and your community currently doing to address the crisis? Anyone can speak first. Mayyu Ali, would you like to begin? I believe She may have a little bit of a difficulty. How about I start with you, Mayyu?
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. So yeah, I mean, the gravest concern for Burmese people right now is the accountability, you know, the immediate accountability. So every Burmese people look at the ICJ court. Last month, the decision that they took at the court, makes the genocide survivor like me, one step closer to the justice. And yeah, so this immediate accountability to perpetrator, not only can, stop, prevent further crimes committed by the Temado against the vulnerable people or general people in Myanmar. It also, pave a way a possibility for repatriation for 1 million of Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bangladesh.
Thank you, Mayyu. I definitely agree with you on that part. Naw Hser Hser, would you like to address the concern that you may have for your communities and for the general crisis overall?
Yeah. Firstly, thank you so much for inviting me to join this webinar series. So I'm really appreciate for your invitation. So, and also really appreciate all Rohingya community and societies that they have been tried for justice and accountability many long years, and also they keep their commitment and they are resilient for fighting together with some of the ethnic groups to get justice, international justice and accountability. So the concern, first I would like to address the concern, share the concern. So there are two big concerns for me. So, and through my experience, so the safety and security for the Burma people. And the second, the international community responsibility. Why I said that? So we really need and to have international community action, effective action, because we have been over many decades, and we have been suffered because of these military junta, torture and kill and atrocity and genocide and crime against humanity. All those things committed the international law. So that's why there's the responsibility of the international community to take strong action. If they don't take strong action, so we were going to be suffer like that. I don't know how many years in the future. So this is what I'm concerned. So what as a WLB and also its member organizations, what we have addressed the crisis. So basically we focus on our vision missions, based on our vision missions, and that priorities the thing, because there's a lot of things to address. So we must priority and address it. So first we focuses for the women human rights defender and also LGBT for protect or address some their security risks to be safe, to be in the safer place. And that we are also support the IDP, which is affect from the conflict and fight it in the different ethnic area. And also we are also strengthened our advocacy message and advocacy action to the international community for international justice and accountability. Especially we we pushed to refer the military junta to the ICC. And also we have other solidarity with the other groups engaging with some Rohingya women and sharing information, and also other ethnic women sharing information that how we can cooperate and push it together to address the crisis in Burma, especially focuses on women and LGBT and also children as well. And then the last thing, as a Women's League of Burma, we are also we have a political stance, and also we push it in the political platform, especially to have women in the women participation, and then also all the ethnic and marginalized people represented in the political decision making levels, each of the different political decision making level. And also when they address or think about decide any principle or policy for the Burma or for the action, there must be include gender perspective, and it must be think about intersectionality, all as intersectionalities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naw Hser Hser. I wholeheartedly appreciate the work that you've done, and Mayyu and Mayyu Ali as well, which is the person who we'll be hearing from shortly, especially on the part that you take a very holistic look at the problem and you address them, from your expertise and from your, from your community level work. And I believe that, oftentimes when we engage at the international level, we're seen as passive. We're seen as someone who's, done the work, but, it's not the same level as the international response or, the international organizations doing the work. But that's that's completely untrue, and our communities have done so much to uplift ourselves. And this is, if there isn't anything that the participants take away today, I hope that they understand this one thing, which is, our communities have done a lot of internal work in order to survive, in order to continue on uplifting our society, and it's time the international communities match that energy. Heading directly to you, Mayyu Ali, if you could address the same question that I asked both Mayyu and Naw Hser Hser. What is the crisis that concerns you the most, and how are you and your colleagues or the movement addressing it?
Thank you. So this event is very important to raise the voice from the ground. So then my organization is working to fighting the justice especially for the human rights survivors, and also especially the women, because our country is several decades already. So then continue war crimes and crimes against humanity happen until now. So our ethnic people is also ongoing the fighting for our right and also equality and federal democracy until now. So many of the civilians is facing this kind of the atrocity and human rights violation, So this is terrible and very, a lot of sad story happen in our areas in our country. So then my organization is continuous support especially to the human rights survivors. And in that situation, we see that CSO role is also very important, because the CSO role, because they are very close working with the grassroots people, especially to supporting to the human rights survivors. So that's why CSO, and also at the same time, the international role is also important. So we see that how can we address this atrocity, and also this, the political system change in the Burma, is all of this stakeholder role is very important, like areas, especially the ethnic areas, that is they this kind of the atrocity happening. We facing a long times ago. So that's why, for example, like from the international community, role is not support and not give favor to the military junta. So that is very important. They have to closely work with the CSO, because that CSO is also, closely work with the people who are really directly affected by the civil war. So then we can, engage, and also we can change the system, and we can find a way to have the genuine peace in our country. So there is, what we really want to be from the response from the international community. And also, currently, we are really united among the civilians. So that's why the civilians movement is very active and strong. So that's why not only from the ethnic people, but also from the lower Burma, like the Burman people is also now we are our, what our networking is more strong and more united to transform this federal democracy. Before only, especially from the lower Burma, is only they are just saying for the democracy, but democracy is not enough for our country. So that's why that is very important to transform into the federal democracy. At the same time, we also have to respect and promoting for the minority right and also indigenous right. So the current situation, all of this military junta is already control and discrimination to this kind of the minority right, and also never respect to the indigenous right, and never listen to the people, the civilians, what they really need. And also never respect to the ethnic equality. So that's why we are continue calling for fulfill of the Panglong Agreement. That is, signed in 1947. That is very important, the first peace agreement for Union of Burma. So that's why we cannot neglect that agreement. So then this kind of the things we have to respect to the civilian right, and also all of this intersection is the current situation is very important to build up and more strongly networking, and then from the international community side have to more supporting to the civilians. So that is what we are targeting and ongoing working in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mamuni. I really like the fact that you have really carved out for us, the certain things that the international community need to do, and the uniqueness of the Burmese society, and the diversity that is needed within the approach. And that, plays right into my next question to Mayyu, because there is a uniqueness to every communities that exist within Myanmar. And especially within the minoritized groups, there's often this erasure of what the issue is like. And, like Mayyu Ali was speaking about, and Naw Hser Hser talked about the gender issues, and, how unique it is that our communities would need a federal democracy instead of just, a democratic outlook of what I think usually the West would see it as, oh, if you have elections, that's it, that's democratic enough. But instead, we're looking at it from a more holistic and communal lens, where we're looking at every community as an important entity in order to make decisions that affect our lives. And that erasure that I'm speaking about, Mayyu has done some exemplary work on revival of the Rohingya literature and culture, among other things that he's done. And he's very busy as a person, as an activist, and the community organizer over the past few years. Can you tell us a little bit more about the importance of this work in combating erasure and, bringing back the importance of our community, and basically helping us reinstitute ourselves as an important part of the Burmese society?
In the context of Rohingya genocide, over the last few years, we have been talking much about the killings and other physical destruction carried by the Burmese, military against Rohingya population in Myanmar. To eliminate Rohingya population, perhaps Myanmar government first targeted our culture and identity. In a similar tactic, the perpetrator used in the Holocaust in 1941 and in the Bosnia genocide, in 1992. So in 1964, the dictator U Ne Win, the godfather of current military coup, excluded Rohingya language from Burmese broadcasting services. The Rohingya language program has been previously broadcasted as indigenous language twice per week. And later, the military administration, conducted several state-sponsored operations aiming to destroy, the Rohingya culture, literature, and identity. And in the face of these genocides, we lost touch with our culture, identity, and literature. I mean, that is what every oppressor wants to happen. So, and that is one of the reasons today the world merely see us as victims, or refugees. Indeed, we are a group of people with culture, literature, strength, resilience, and courage. And the real spirituality lies in our own culture and language. The power of culture and language shape the way we think. And it is very important to preserve cultural heritage because it keeps us integrated as a people. And that is exactly what we need right now in the period of rebuilding the community. Today, there are some incredible community-led initiative in the Rohingya community. And we have, in 2019, when I was in the refugee camp in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, and my friend and I established Art Garden Rohingya, and we seek to revive Rohingya culture, literature, and art, and also empower Rohingya youth toward writing and creations. And yeah, so currently we are holding an online art contest on the Rohingya Genocide Remembrance Day. So calling for submission of poetry, short stories, translation, painting, and drawing. So yeah, and all we want is to celebrate ourselves with resilience, courage, skills, and creativities, and in order to uplift the spirit of the youth and community leaders in the community. And we seek to remind the community who we are, and so that we can understand where we need to go. And yeah, so I think it's very important to preserve, your culture and language, so that every culture is a powerful force, to move people forward, where they need to go. And so my team and I have been doing some sort of work like this, and yeah, so it's a still way to go, and yeah, but we are very hopeful.
Thank you so much. I really, really admire the work that you've done. I think that oftentimes in the context of mass atrocity and violence, we forget that people need a lot more to actually thrive as a community. There's very little that humans as a community would need in order to survive. But do we want to keep humans at a survival mode? Do we want the communities to actually thrive and create beautiful things that we all can take part in? And the survival, the bare minimum is often thought of as enough. But truly, like when it comes to genocide, there's so many more angles that we can tackle, and so many more work that needs to be done to combat that erasure. So thank you, Mayyu, for your work and your continuation of resilience of the spirits that you've shown us. Moving to Naw Hser Hser, using the same round again. Through the years of working with WLB and KWO, you've seen many situations that involve gender discrimination and gender depression, and many other intersectional identities. How is it done, and why is it done very specifically, and how do you think change can take place systemically from your perspective and from your expertise? You're on mute. Sorry.
Thank you for the good question. So these questions, I think most of the women who live in Burma has been faced in different level, especially not only we are women because of we are women, but also we are the groups or people or the group ethnic minority or majority also have been faced different kind of the discrimination level. So women in Burma have a long experience and also entrenched in equality and systematic barriers to economic and political and social leadership, and also in the society as well. And that gender discrimination is a form of power over meanings, is a tool utilized by the person or institution in power, and also to dominate and control resources. In this instance, gender or discrimination is a tool used by military junta and also any institute, and even also the patriarchy institute, because we are seeing that in Burma, it's not only the person who have it power and dominant discriminate, but also the system made up as a patriarchy system. So that's why when we have looked to the different ethnics, they also practice their customary, and in the customary practice, there's a lot of discriminations and oppress the women, include LGBT, and also when we have looked at the country protection or a state protection or any law and regulations, there's also a lot of discriminate or exclude or oppress the women's LGBT by law and by regulation as well. And that also, when we have looked to the platform, even the peace process or even the political dialogue, there's automatic exclude and not priority. And think about the diverse representation in the process to discuss together, or to make a decision with the women or with the any minority, because their mindset and they are as I say, the patriarchy systems has influenced them to not to think that this is not important. This is not the important issue to bring. Even they say all inclusive, but in reality, always they exclude and discriminate the people and the device other ethnic groups to be in the platform. So to dominate and control women, especially women. So I want to discuss more, focus on the women, because we are mostly double and triple dominate and discriminate by these Burma like EC2 and any in person. Yeah. So to dominate and control women, so that they can, so they seems that they can control the resources, especially they make up and they break up all the men to be in the leadership and in the table or in the important places. So it is, Victor, we acknowledge intersectionality discrimination. We all have multiple identities or aspect of our life that impact how we experience discrimination. For ethnic women, and we are not only discriminated against because of we are women. As I mentioned before, we are also discriminated against because of we are ethnicity, and because of we are as groups of people. And which is it means we are not more likely to experience poverty and a social disadvantage. And that to systematically change the gender discrimination, power and control over resources and decision making need to be redistributed to those that experience the discrimination. In the case, ethnic women include LGBTIQ communities and also the other marginalized people. WLB is working toward a more equal distribution of the power in a number of ways. For example, we are working together to build alliance that strengthen the work of the women's rights organizations, movement, build it is essential to transforming gender power relations. There's an unprecedented cooperation between different ethnic women's groups in response to the military coup. And also the other side is since 2021, we start to build a relationship and also connection with the Rohingya women, which is they based in the Bangladesh and in every other world. And also we also bring them to our platform when we discuss conflict-related sexual violence, the experience of the women's faces in the current situations. And that also the women's movement has been able to improve its capacity for social mobilization and networking as well. So we can estimate the women's movement over 60 of women's population in Burma. They stand against the military coup and also be active to keep their resilient and their fighting for the resistance movement. So women's human rights defenders represent different ethnics and religions and also age across Burma. They are also unified by their collective cost to dismantle and delegitimize the military junta and restore the federal democracy unions. And on the other side, also for the justice and accountability, we are also have a collective voice, collective action, and then we reach and set the open letter or closed letter, or we have it organize the meeting with any special representative or special reporter, and also the expert from any international platform. So women's leadership is also critical to ending gender discrimination. Prior to the military coup, the women's rights movement was gaining momentum and resilience, and also WLB is one, and also its member also ran a leadership course for the ethnic women. These women are now challenging the gender stereotype and taking a community and a political leadership position in different level. And also we have a very hard experience to how to say to push that because of the mindset. Even they talk about the gender equality, even they talk about the intersectionality, but in deep they don't even understand. So actually the platform of the decision making, we need to make a clear position and principle, but we have to start in the beginning to give them awareness reasons. So for through my experience in the NUCC, so the only one of the principles that we push it, we took more than 2 months. So we we have to, as I mentioned, we have to start in the beginning to give the awareness reason and why, what, how, so all the things there. So this is what I have the experience, and then also working with the Women's League of Burma, and also even in the Career Women's Organization. Also, we also part of the currents, especially engaging with the KNU as well. So we still pushing them the same ways that we push the other stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naw Hser Hser. Those were very important outlook of what your work, and I think what's the common experience of women working in this, working to advocate for our communities would look like, especially on the resource issue. That gender is being used as a tool in order to dispossess or displace people, which bring us to the next question and the last round before we actually go into the question and answer from the participant. So I'm going to pose the question to Mayyu Ali on you've been working with the Kachin Women's Association of Thailand, and you guys have done some exemplary work for the IDP communities in Kachin State. What are some of the specific challenges that you see in displacement, and connecting that to Naw Hser Hser's answer on resources distribution, and how do you think the displaced community can be best supported and best served?
Yes. According to our finding and research on the IDP situation, so because of in our Kachin areas, there is a long civil war happens, because of this, we didn't have the ethnic equality and not really freedoms, even though we gained independence from the British colony. Until now, we have to fight for our right and equality. So however, before I mentioned that war crimes and crimes against humanity ongoing happening. So most of the IDP, when the military soldiers come into the village, they are targeted to the civilians. They are not just targeted to the ethnic resistant groups. So that's why all of this, most of the IDP are directly affected by the, make atrocity, and also war crimes happen in their village. So that's why they have to flee to the safety area. So that they become the IDP, even though there is not fighting, there is no fighting. So there is also the one kinds of the IDP directly affected by the attack by the military soldier, the hunter soldier. And also when we are doing supporting to the IDP, not only my organization, but also even though the church community is also closely support to the IDP, the camp, and they also receive the IDP to stay in their church compound or something like that. They are give support to some this kind of the supporting. So at that time, the military is also accused to the person who are support to the IDP, especially from the Kachin independent organization control areas. So they are accused like unlawful association. We call the 17th one. Is also a big, scary and risky for the people who are give support to the IDP, even though they are, just distribute like food or other basic need to the IDP. They can arrest anytime. And also when, since 2015-16, there is, the NLD government has some kind of the power. So then the Aung San Suu Kyi is also saying that not to support to IDP, this kind of supporting to IDP is make more conflict in the country. This kind of mindset is also, it is, how can we say that? It is make more challenges for doing supporting to IDP. So after 2016, so that's why, a lot of the aid and the funding is reducing and also stop funding to the IDP. But even though there is increasing the IDP number, so now after the military coup, there is more risky to give support to the IDP because of the, anytime they can to arrest by the military and authority, the security and transportation is also a big challenges for us. There is a lot of checkpoint. So the IDP camp is very remote. So only my organization and, only 2 organizations can try to, reach to give support to the IDP camp. In that situation, we also feel that because of the funding limitation, all of the, the donor, international donor is just focused to the G2G and only focused to the registered organization or something like that. So we call that to give support as the cross-border aid supporting to IDP. That will be more, affected way to give support to that IDP. So that's why many of the, community, IDP community are request and asking for give support them. But for us, it is very difficult to find money for this kind of the humanitarian aid. We saw, we had that, we saw a lot of news that how many millions dollar, were support to the Kachin IDP or something like that, even though there is, where is that money, this kind of thing we facing in the real situation. So that's why have to support, their basic needs and healthcare. Now there is all of the IDP are feeling their, like their mental health is not really, how can we say that it is not really good for them because only they can stay very small shelter. So already more than 10 years, their children are already teenager. So then they, especially for the girl, the young women. So in that situation, in the IDP camp, there is no safety for the women and girls because of this kind of the limitation. And so at the same time, we have to give support to the mental care and also at the same time for their livelihood, like a livelihood project or something like that. So now that is the one thing for the education is also really important for the IDP because now they are already, some cannot attend the school because of the, the limit, a lot of limitation happen in that IDP camps. So that's why we facing a lot of challenges to give support to IDP. They were risky and the security and all of this, funding limitation is a big challenges for us. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mamoneli. You hit a lot of very, very important points. And I wholeheartedly, agree and I feel you for, for the struggles that the IDPs in the Kachin state have had to go through in terms of your work within the Rohingya community as well. And maybe you can, speak more about this. There are many challenges and the challenges are almost, just exactly the same, especially on education, on civilian attacks, on limitations on fundings, which is something that has been plaguing our communities all around Myanmar, because our communities are not structured in a way that is palatable to the human rights structure that exists internationally. And sometimes we're sort of having to figure out how to structure ourselves in that sense, but then it does not work for, it does not respond to the need of the community on the ground. And there's so much confusion, within the work. And I feel like our communities have had to do so much in order to just get like this tiny bit of funding in order to extend the life of our works and the people in our community. So thank you for all of your points. I wish I have more time to speak with you all. I wish we have 9 hours so we can go on and on and on. But now I have to move on to the questions that were asked by the participants, and I'm going to actually combine them so that we can, address them kind of easier. So there are some questions on the Rohingya working with other minorities and working with basically the position of our collaboration through the international action. There's also questions on how we feel the Rohingya, and I'm going to add minority groups and ethnic communities because all of us are from ethnic communities today. And basically the Alex has asked, what are the feelings and our response in terms of the openness now, sudden openness by the NUG, towards ethnic groups, and are we convinced if the NUG would follow through with the promises, especially on the repatriations and other rights? And there are a few other questions on the advice of Rohingya, but I think I'm going to boil them all down to this question, which is something that I want to ask you all today. And in a few minutes, if you can address this. We know that exclusionary policy and practices have been the key driving force to the division within Myanmar by the authorities, including the previous administration and the military junta. How do you foresee changes in Myanmar, and what would it look like, and what can be done to ensure this inclusion, and what would, ethnic solidarity, minoritized community solidarity, and discriminated groups, how would it look like that they come together? And how do you foresee the future if in case we resist and this fall through and we just all don't have to worry about the military anymore? I'm going to start with you, Mayyu Ali, because you've been the last person who spoke in the past two rounds. So I'm going to start with you, Mayyu, and then Naw Hser Hser. The floor is yours.
So when we look back to the happening of the long civil war in the country, so then the big impact to the civilians is very bad, especially for the women. And the ethnic areas is also, very bad situation until now. So in that situation, the women are the most vulnerable person by this long civil war happen. So everywhere, every places, the women are not safe. So until now, there is ongoing the sexual violence happen in our Kachin area. So there is very brutally happening. Some areas there is gang rape and torture and then murder to that women. So in that situation, we are trying to doing for finding the justice. We have a lot of experience that, the authority, especially the military, under the military, before the military coup, there is the military regime is never care to the people who are asking and report to this situation. And also, the lawyer who are voluntarily helping in that kind of the cases, they also a bit scary because the military threatened to a lot, the lawyer who can help give help to these cases. So especially the military involvement, the cases is very dangerous to taking, finding the justice. Even though we are, bringing the case to the Supreme Court in Naypyidaw, there is also already this because that is involved by the military, the officer, and also the military authority or something like that. So until now, this kind of the impunity and atrocity is ongoing to the to the women. So the military after military coup, because of the surveillance movement is really strong, and now the surveillance is really united, and CSO is more stronger, network among our CSO. So that's why the military core is failure, and not until now we are sure that they are not control every area. So this is what we hope that in the future, we really want that our movement will be gain, and also we can transform this federal democracy in the country. So, however, from the outside community or internal among the people from the country, we can give support each other more stronger than before. It is really important. And also at the same time, the outside community can closely support to the ERO and the current, the NUG, because there is, they are, NUG is also one of the, we can say that they are representative of the civilians. They are, very, how can we say that, listen to the civilians' voices. And at the same time, we have to look to the transitional justice issue, because the accountability is very important in the current situation. So in our inside the country, we cannot find this kind of the accountability, because all of justice system is controlled by the military junta. So that's why from the outside, international accountability is really important, the current situation for the Burma. So that's why when we are talking about the transitional justice issue, is also very important to take action by the international accountability. And when we are really want to see the peace in the country, we cannot, neglect about the justice. So if there is no justice, there is no peace. So that's why peace and justice is, together we can work, focus and emphasize on that issue. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Moving on to you, Mayyu, and I'm going to change the question slightly. For you, for the community that both of us are from, what would solidarity look like? And this is solidarity, by extension, it applies to the NUG, applies to the NUCC, applies to many other ethnic communities, organizations, human rights, organizations as well, internationally or domestically. What would help in the case of our community? What would be the best ways to actually approach this issue to uplift Rohingya community in order for further harms to be prevented through to other communities, apart from what Mayyu Ali was talking about in terms of ending impunity?
As I said earlier, the solidarity from the international community, especially to hold the military perpetrator, is very, very important for now. And it's a long process at the International Court of Justice, but look at the situation in Myanmar, and no, the general Burmese people are being hunted. They are the same perpetrators, who rape Rohingya women and young girls, and the same gun, hunted the general Burmese people in the country right now. And yeah, so the solidarity from the international community is very important, and also the solidarity from the international community, and they should also exert pressure to the Myanmar government, including through comprehensive use of target sanction, and cutting all the economic ties, providing farm and also weapon, selling weapon, and yeah, and that is the only way, to end the further ache of crimes against Burmese people in Myanmar. So in terms of supporting and for Rohingya community, to move forward. So I will request the international community to invest or support, the Rohingya community-led, CSOs and others initiative, that make change in grassroots, and also the international community, should establish, some support where we can educate and empower Rohingya youth, like to leadership, to participation in politics, democracy, and other social framework, and it's very, very important. And yeah, so right now, the majority of Rohingya population, reside in the refugee camp in Cox's Bazar. And yeah, every day we wish to go back home, to live together with the community that we used to live in our past. And, but those fellow Burmese communities, are, being hunted and they are not safe. And, and yeah, so we really need, to work together, like to nurture an inclusive, society in Myanmar. And yeah, so we also need support, from the general Burmese people. And when the one thing that we can see clearly into the Myanmar is, how much people are united, by the suffering at the hand of the military coup. And yeah, it's miracle, the way people are united, the way people show solidarity with each other, and it's a very good sign, for reconciliation, and yeah, so in some lands, I feel like, especially for youth in minority communities, and we need to maximize our version, rather than, our own community and like indigenous region, and yeah, we need to move forward, toward presentation of the whole country or for the general Burmese people as a whole, and it's very, very important. And yeah, so yeah, when we look back in Myanmar and see how minority people are divided and estranged from each other, and one minority concentrated in the Thailand border, and another in Chinese border, and others over the border in Bangladesh, So we really need to understand this explanatory, policy and practice of the decades-long military administration, and yeah, so keeping that in mind, we need to understand is like our voice is taller than those walls that the military put between us, and our will to preserve justice and prevail in the country is more stronger than any sort of power season, and we have a skill to survive. We have a history of resistance, and yeah, so this time, this should be the last time, so that we can, we don't have to face another power season again in the country. And yeah, and to nurture, inclusion and to live together in Myanmar, and there should be, some initiative to educate and empower youth, and to create spaces and where, the youth from different minority communities can sit together, exchange their thought, ideas, and so that they can shape, a better future for them collectively. And currently, the Myanmar National Unity Government is a glimpse of hope for the people, and they really need to look at this lens, to inclusion and to support the youth in the minorities communities, to move forward to politics, to participation in democracy, in other social framework.
Thank you, Mayyu. Really appreciate your inspiring word at the end there too, for giving us the hopes and really pushing us to think a little bit outside the box and to really ensure that when we think about solidarity, when we think about the work that are really daunting in front of us, to ensure that the communities in the country comes back together after so much of devastation, destruction, and seeds of mistrust have been being sown for decades. I appreciate the fact that you brought in the positivity and such a calming and soothing understanding towards what our community would need, and that is just, I think, compassion and understanding. If we employ a little bit more of that among ourselves, we would actually see that a lot of our struggles are just very similar, and the end goal is all the same, is the destruction of the communities, and we don't want that. We know that our communities have so much to offer and so many brilliant people who live in it, such beautiful culture that we are ready to share with the world. But this waves of crises that have come into our country and communities have basically prevented that from flourishing. Now, the questions to you, Naw Hser Hser, is the same. What would solidarity look like for our communities to be able to move on together, especially in the context of Rohingya genocide, because there is a very, very prominent theme within this very specific recent mass atrocity in 2017 by the junta, especially on the sexual and gender-based violence and the use of it in order to displace people, in order to push people out, in order to sow the seed of fear within the community so that they don't come back and the lands are taken, all of that. This the stuff that you've talked about earlier. And so what would it look like? How do we move on from this? And what are the advice that you may have for us in a few minutes so that I can ask the next question, but take your time, and the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you for the flow. So actually it's Moneli and Mayyu has mentioned a lot regarding engagement and solidarity with the civil society and the groups that other minority, ethnic minority as well. But as my opinions, I thought and I feel that the civil societies that especially who are basically stand for the human rights, women's rights, and also ethnics, some of the ethnics, so they feel the same as a Rohingya community has this suffered, but some of them they still neglect, and they still not being like feeling the same ways as the Rohingya community, Rohingyans feels as well. So the solidarity is very important to reach our goal from the same painter and the same impunity that committed by the military junta. So this is in this time is the good chance to have strong solidarity and a strong engagement. So not only within the ethnic minority and also civil society, but also the policy maker. The policy maker also need to address and they need to put the agenda or to make of the position or the policy for the Rohingyans. How they going to how to say acknowledge, or how they going to recognize the Rohingyas as ethnic or as what. So this is really important to make the decision on that, and that the people can follow and implement or push it based on that. So for now, it's mostly different ethnic or different society, because of their stand and value, so they recognize, but not as a common yet. So this is what I think need common for the people who living in Burma to recognize and to to acknowledge the Rohingya suffered and Rohingya experience. So this is the first thing that I think we need solidarity to make it and carry on the message, or pushing the weight and do advocacy or many different strategy to push in that. And then the second, so why the period of the conflict in the Rohingya and that the period in the ethnic. So actually we feel the same way, but we didn't in the past 70 years ago. So in the ethnic area also the same ways that they were killed and they torture and they burn or massacre, all the things the same, that's and they flee to the cross borders, and even after they flee to the cross borders, they also stay in the refugee camp, and they feel the same way. So they were in the limitation and rule and regulation under the border. So all those things also feel the same way. So what we are reach the same to end impunity and get seen justice and accountability. This is our common way, our common goal that we want. So, but in strategically, how are we going to have solidarity, and how are we going to have a common strategy to push it in this way? So this is what we need to fight off the way to have more engaging and network it on that. And the last part, what I have been analyzed also, and also may you also mention about in the political platform. So in the past, you can have looked to the peace process. They exclude a lot of diverse representatives, include Rohingya. That's why the reason of the process failed, because of the lack of a representative. I think one of the reason as well, not only the military not have a political will, but also the lack of representative and the exclusion of its representation also is the one of the reason as well. And the second also, in the Karat, even the NUCC or even the political platform that we are discussed for the restored federal democracy or restore even the democracy, whatever restoration, they need to think about participation and representation from the different diverse, even the minority and even the Rohingya as well. So this is really important of this. So we have sought the NUG open mind of the statement on the Rohingya, but I don't know how Rohingya feel on it. I don't know, and also how strong action take it. So this is also we can see some of the positive that they open mind to talk about the Rohingya and having position on the Rohingya, but how in reality and practically and action. So this is implementation. This is most important. So I don't know how Rohingya feel it on that. So actually I feel not really strong action on that, even after the statement or after then. I didn't see too much of the action on it. Even in the society, or also I think some of them we can share about the history of the Rohingya, but some of them they don't even know how's the history of the Rohingya. So this is also really important to start to have more awareness raisings and engaging with them and having to solidarity action for the further, because we need trust building, we need relationship, building relationship, and build up the understanding. So this really important step that we need to go on. Without that, we can't even go on, because if not that, we can have some position or some principle on the paper, but if not, you are willingness to do that and acknowledge to do that, so that will be on the paper. Everything will be on the paper, not action. So this is what I would like to share. So the solidarity is really important. Not only think about solidarity one way, but also think about solidarity in the political struggle. Think about solidarity in the diplomat struggle, and then international advocacy struggle, and then think about the people, the public struggles, and then also civilian struggles. So, and that think about the struggle within the groups that we have common goals, especially adding impunity on the justice and accountability. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Naw Hser Hser. And I think that kind of close it for us all for this stellar panel. Again, I can't thank you all enough. And I know that some participants have mentioned as well that they really, really want to encourage all three of you to, continue on your important work. I really want to admire you once again for the work that you've done. I know that this sort of panel is just very, very tiny glimpse of what hard work you've had to do and will continue to do. I wish that I could listen to you forever, but it's not possible. I, however, have something that one of the participants have actually put down in the questions, and I think it's important because this is from someone who lives in Cox's Bazar, and I think it's a good note to end on. This is by Muhammad Farouk, and he said that peace be upon you. I'm Farouk from Cox's Bazar refugee camp. Now it's been 5 years since we came to Bangladesh and stayed as refugees. Our priorities are always, the wish to return home to Myanmar. We can only return home happily with peace and smile when safety and equality are granted for Rohingya in Myanmar under the supervision and observation of United Nations. The situation in Myanmar is really bad right now. Every day, people are being killed, tortured, and arrested in almost every state in Myanmar, including Rakhine State. In Bangladesh, we're also suffering from different human rights violations, including the right to education, freedom of movement, and freedom of expression. Right now, what we need the most from the international community to do for us is please speak out for the Rohingya. We want to return home, and please enhance the process of your work about justice and human rights for Rohingya. And lastly, what I think would capture everything that our panelists talked about is to ensure that at every stage of involvement that you have within the Myanmar Burma work or the Rohingya work very specifically, or the ethnic nationalities work, it's important to first listen to the communities and actually look critically at these different issues from the intersectional lens and really address it, by being a keen listener, by being a keen learner and student of our history, of our social and political movements, in order to actually ensure that we built something that is not that is not going to have negative impacts on the community. And with that, I hand this back to you, Karen. Thank you very much for all your keen attention.
Thank you, Yasmin. I want to just thank you for moderating this unique event and engaging discussion. It was really great to listen in on. I want to say thank you to our speakers. We are very grateful for you taking time out of your busy schedules to join this discussion on moving forward in unity and solidarity on this special commemoration. I want to thank our sponsoring organizations and Adam for supporting this event. And a thank you to UN Special Rapporteur Tom Andrews for his video message. I also want to say a thank you to you, our audience, for joining and sharing your wonderful questions. As our event comes to a close, let us remember those lost during the 2017 Rohingya genocide, those that suffered for decades under the Burmese junta, and those targeted by the Burmese military today. Until the day that the military regime is removed from power and held accountable for the Rohingya genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and human rights violations they committed with impunity, there is still much to do to aid and support the Rohingya, ethnic minorities, and the people of Burma. Together, we can and shall demand to be heard to further uplift these impacted communities. We hope that as you leave our event today, you come away with renewed hope to continue fighting for peace, justice, inclusivity for the people of Burma. I hope everyone has a good morning and good night. Thank you.